Welcome back to Singapore Tonight. More now on one of our top stories. Ceremonial events and community exhibitions have been held island-wide as part of Total Defence Day, marking the day that Singapore fell to the Japanese in 1942.
And for more on this year's initiatives, we're joined by Senior Lieutenant Colonel Psalm Lew. He's the Director of Community Engagement Nexus at the Ministry of Defence. Psalm, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Today we had the commemoration ceremony. At 6:20, we were in the office, but I could very distinctly hear, the sirens, which again brings back the message of total defence to the front of mind. But yet there are going to be some differences this year in the way you guys program total defence. Tell us more about that.
Well, we made two key shifts for total defence. First, we're going to use contemporary issues that affect our everyday lives to help Singaporeans understand the relevance of total defence to Singapore's security and success. The second thing we're going to do differently is we're going to get Singaporeans to start thinking about crisis and disruptions and get them to participate and be involved in putting total defence into action. So let me give you an example. Today we had the Total Defence Day commemoration event, and we held it at Chua Chu Kang Community Club. We decided to shift it to the heartlands to remind Singaporeans that the community has a part to play in total defence. And the event marked the end of the Total Defence Community Tabletop exercise, where we got participants to talk about a contemporary issue. Specifically for today, it was about disruption of essential supplies. And the most important thing we got them to do is to think about what they would do. And we also got them to think about what their community could get together and prepare for a scenario like that. And we were doing all this because we wanted to increase individual and community and businesses' readiness for crisis and disruption. Right.
I think it's often forgotten that even in peacetime, one needs to be ready to play one's part. I mean, there are many threats out there. You mentioned relevance, and I want to ask you why total defence, with all its many pillars, is such an important message for the community. Why it's still so relevant today?
Well, I mean, just look back the last few years, the things that we have all seen. We all went through a pandemic together. Last year, there were a lot of disruption of supplies and the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, all these are security threats that are evolving, and they're multifaceted. Right? And in response to this, you need total defense. You need total defense because total defense is a whole of society strategy that mobilizes actions across the military, civil, economic, digital, and social and psychological defense pillars. And you need a whole of society strategy to deal with a multifaceted, complex, evolving problem. And I think the other thing I would add is we also need to build on our experience from the pandemic. If you look back the last 3 years, we would be able to say to ourselves that we have been a resilient people, and Singaporeans demonstrated that we can work together to overcome a crisis. On Monday, we declared DORSCON green and we are out of the pandemic. Now is not the time to relax. It's very important that we build on the unity and the resilience that has been accumulated over the last 3 years to strengthen ourselves, to be more prepared for crisis and disruptions, and put Singapore in a stronger position to succeed for the future.
When we talk about total defense, even from young, we're taught total defense. It's very much a concept, right, in a lot of our minds. And then you bring up whole of society, you bring up collective resilience, again, concepts. But actually, we're talking about really very tangible things that people can do in real life, right? For people who are watching, what can I do? Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. So actually, we can put total defense into action in our everyday lives, just by supporting the need for defense and our national servicemen. You are strengthening military defense. Learning skills like CPR, AED, and first aid, increases emergency preparedness and strengthens civil defense. Fact-checking news before you share them strengthens digital defense. Preparing for supply chain disruptions increases economic resilience. Helping the vulnerable around us, as well as helping them become adaptive, helping ourselves become adaptive, increases social and psychological resilience. In short, anything that we do, skills, programs, initiatives that increases our readiness for crisis and disruption are all important contribution to the total defense of Singapore.
Really, not to repeat the cliche, but everybody has a part to play, isn't it?
That's right.
Thank you very much for coming in and sort of cementing the notion of total defense to us. We've been speaking there with Senior Lieutenant Colonel Psalm Lew. He is the Director of Community Engagement at Nexus at the Ministry of Defense.